Okay, so we're in the 80s. It's 1988. That's
Mm-hmm.
when the coalition stands up.
Mm-hmm.
I was just giving a little bit of the federal or the national backdrop just to kind of paint that picture. Like, okay, well, now we're close at home here. Now
Right.
we're in a city. At that same time, I'm assuming, having difficulties getting enough funding.
There wasn't
The
there wasn't any funding in '88.
Okay.
Our organization,
Or there may have been for other parts of the country, just not
oh
here.
yes, the metropolitan areas,
San Francisco, New
San
York,
Francisco, New York, Chicago, Washington D.C., New Orleans. They were all Atlanta. They were all getting the funding. We were getting no funding. In '88, the AIDS Action Coalition literally started out with a cigar box with donations in it.
Oh, wow.
In the back of a bar, which doesn't exist anymore. It was called the Vue Carré. It was called the Carré. It was called the Vue. It was anyways, two men who owned the bar, Boogie and Papa. I will never forget those two people, those two individuals. They actually stepped up, and it was just a group of friends there was no organization. We did incorporate in 1988, and the people on that incorporation paperwork were people from the community that had some sort of an interest. And actually, a woman I go to church with, Barbara Myers, she was actually on the incorporated park paperwork, and she helped with National Children's Advocacy Center, I believe, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
She was an early person that helped.
Because that was only 4 years prior to that.
Yeah. So I came along in 92. Again, I had been working for the Red Cross as their health educator. And, I was teaching basic first aid and CPR and babysitting and, blah, blah, blah. But I was also teaching about HIV and AIDS. And it just became so apparent to me that this is where I needed to be. And so many things from back then. We lived in Limestone County is in our service area. All the men that were incarcerated in the state, we could talk for hours, were housed, and I mean housed, at Limestone Correctional Facility. And they were in a big metal building with no air conditioning. They worked on the chain gang. I mean, there were just so many inequities that were happening. So I worked with the ACLU on trying to make sure that people that were incarcerated and had HIV and AIDS got the same, not benefits, but the same treatment as everyone else. On the weekends, they only got 2 meals a day. I mean, that's typical for breakfast, a hearty breakfast, and dinner. Well, people in the early days had to take their medication with food, and that meant that they went without their medication for that noon meal. I mean, so many things that were just so unfair. And the Southern Poverty Law Center and the ACLU and a group of us were really trying to make sure that they got the same benefits as everyone else.
It reminded me, I was in my research, like some of the original scientists, right? There was no funding federally. What can we do? And it was a sad number. There was like less than 100, but let's say it was like 80 scientists. They just kind of band together, probably similar to the Vue, the back room of a bar, and it was like a meager. They raised $8,000 amongst each other. Yep. Not a lot of money.
Not a lot of money.